way earlier than I intended to be. So the plural of the plural of y'all is all y'alls. So I had an idea what I wanted to talk about. So I wanted to talk about a couple things. First, let me start with a big tip. If you were going to write a blurb, and this is very specific, oddly specific for somebody who's going to write a book with 3 characters and wants to write a blurb, because I gave this advice this week. So let's say you want to write a blurb for 3 characters and write this down. Okay, so you're going to start with your log line. In a world where magic is fueled by scones and buttercream icing, right? Start with a strong 1-sentence log line. Give me a sizzle, not the steak, a sizzle of the world. Give me some world building there. But don't spend 3 10-sentence chapters on it. So you got your log line, and then you do 3 paragraphs, right? I should have done this against the wall, but I'll eventually have like a whiteboard or something. So you do 3 paragraphs, 1, 2, 3, for each character in a world where buttercream is the highest form of magic. We have Butterbean, the elf that has just found out that she'll be inheriting her mother's baking business a year too soon because her mother got caught up in the beast wave, and her name is like let's go with Rhea. And so Rhea's mother got caught up in the beast wave, and someone has to man the wholesome Butterbean Emporium, right? So you have a paragraph 1 character. Give me something about their needs or wants. Like she needs her mother, or she wants her mother to be alive, but she needs to run the shop. And then we have so 2 other characters, right? So the point is, what I was directing this author to do, because I mentor other authors, is to look at the blurb for Stormlight and kind of adhere to how they have 3 main characters. They have Kaladin, Shallan, and Dalinar are the 3 main characters, and then their stuff gets intertwined kind of near the end a little bit. Shallan takes more time to integrate with the rest of them, and then Dalinar and Kaladin they link up at the very end for good, which isn't to say they hook up, which would be an awesome thing. I'm not gonna write a fan fiction, but I read some fan fiction specifically about Dalinar and Wit, and I'm not gonna. Yeah. Anyway, Stormlight fans are gonna be like, "What? What did you read?" You'll know if you've been in Crown Posting, you know. So that's what I would do. I would just say, I need to emphasize the setting a little bit. But what I see newer authors doing is give me 3 long paragraphs about the setting. Like the gods were like this, and then the world happened to change in such a way to allow the system, or magic flourished in the system over thousands of years, and then the wars happened, and blah, 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 blah. That's great. That's lore. If you haven't told me about a character in the first 2 paragraphs, you are probably not doing so well. And now I understand, listen, I understand that this might be your baby. I understand that you want it to, this is the way that you think it should go, right? Because that's the sense you get. But I'm going to bring it back to the book that I read to my kids last night called Pinkalicious. All right. So Pinkalicious is a kids show on PBS. It's also a book series. It is one of the only kids book series I've seen that is in first person, which means you can get the interior dialogue. All right. So that makes it unique. I read this birthday party story a lot, and just so we're all clear, if you tied balloons to a chair, you would have to tie them to the front and to the back in order for it to stay up, not just the back, because then it would just flop down. Unrelated to everything else. So your advice for the day, do not tie balloons to a chair and attempt to fly off. It will not work out well for you. It does in children's books because they are fanciful things. But what I'm trying to say is, so let's say I have a cake. This is my cake, right? And I want to talk it to you, and I want to say, that the cake is delicious. So I could tell you the cake is delicious. Hey, this cake is delicious. But that doesn't really tell you, that doesn't describe it to you, right? So instead I'm going to be like, okay, so the cake is the thing that I've been looking for this entire time because it's a giant pink, imagine this is the pink cupcake cake. Muffins, I should have brought a muffin. It happens. I could tell you the cake looks great. Or I could tell you the characters. The next level would be like the characters being like, this cake is delicious after they're eating it, right? So the characters are telling you how they feel, right? So like Pinkalicious could have told you that she's feeling, I felt like I tasted the cake and it tasted delicious. Like she could say that, or she could just say, this is delicious to her brother, Peter, because they're next to each other. And she could also be like, hey, I was waiting for this. And also the big reveal, like it takes them the entire thing, the entire book for them to get to the cake. And like she obviously like, so like Pinkalicious, like everything's pink. They're in Pinkville. I can't believe I'm using this as a metaphor. But anyway, so children's books, they have to tell a story and they have to be concise about it. But they can't tell. They have to show. So how do you show a character says the cake is delicious? Oh, that's delicious, right? So they're going to remark about something because you can't have an experience of them doing it, but you can understand, you can empathize with their experience of eating the cake, right? And so that's a technique I would say. Like think about if you're telling someone the cake is delicious, right? You could tell someone the cake is a lie, but then like you could have a character like reach their hand through the cake and just be like, the cake, I can't feel anything as I'm pushing my hand through the cake, and then as I take it out, I'm freaked out by what I see because there's no icing and no like caking on my hand. And they could be like, the cake is a lie. The cake's been a lie all along. The cake was just something that the story manufactured to give you a fun ending because it was a birthday party story. The name of this book is called Happy Birthday, Pinkalicious. I wouldn't buy it unless you had some kids, but kids would love it, especially my 3 and 5-year-old. I read that thing like 10 times. So you have to, I can't believe this became a show don't tell, or yeah, you have to show their experience doing it, but you can't just be like heavy-handed in it. And so let me go back to one of the stories I was writing. So I'm writing a story called Bodega Cat. It's about a cat named Bagel, who gains sentience through the system. And in one of the scenes, so like Bagel has lived his entire life since he was 8 weeks old in this bodega. He was adopted by the owner of the bodega, who has since passed away due to the system coming in and him getting sentience and a deck of cards. So Bagel doesn't remember people the way that you and I remember people. So you might remember conversations with somebody that you recently had, but what Bagel remembers from his time before is the vague recollection of how they felt to him, right? So like, this is something that happens in memory. So like people forget the things you said, but they will remember the things that like how you made them feel. So to Bagel, Raul, the guy that worked there, not the owner because the owner died, because I'm gonna have a different scene about that. Raul, the guy that worked there, was his primary caretaker because Raul like worked full time, and if anyone had the job of cleaning up the cat box, it was Raul, right? So like other people were there, but like the way 24/7 bodega works is somebody has to be at all times, which means that there are at least 3 full-timers, because 167 hours, and that means that Raul was there during the hours that Bagel was awake mostly. Excuse me. So, like, let me explain how I wrote the most emotional scene I've ever written. So Bagel, he gets a sentience right before the system arrives. When Bagel gets a sentience, there's an announcement by the aliens or the magical beings that give the thing. And Raul goes to see his family. So like, you see that in the text, like he's afraid because like he lives in Brooklyn, and the boat or wherever he lives, and then the shop itself is in Manhattan, so he has to walk down to 42nd Street, take the train over to where he lives to be with his family, because no one knows what's about to happen, right? Everyone's like, oh, they're going to shut down electronics or something like that, and that is not a trope that I'm doing. I'm going to say the aliens left the electronics there, or whoever's behind the system, basically gods are behind the system, depending on the interpretation. They left social media there, they left cell phones there, they didn't disable electricity because they wanted people to be afraid, right? Because they wanted to see that, because like the reveal is going to be like it's a game show, right? So Raul goes back to see his family. He comes back 2 days later to see what happened to the shop, because he feels guilty about Bagel and like what's going on there. And because things haven't really changed that much, it's also an allegory about like the way the apocalypse could happen, and your boss could still be like, hey, come back to work. And you just be like, I got to pay rent. Yep. Got to go back to work again in the lava mines. Anyway, so Bagel's outside. He's fighting these mobs with his card summons. And then he sees Raul, and he's like, I remember you. And what he remembers is he remembers the vague notion of this person. And he remembers how this person feels. And then all of a sudden, he's like a kitten again, because he's like, you made me feel safe in a place where I never felt safe, where I had to grow up in a harsh reality, right? Because he's in the city. And that's what I'm like, okay, so I could tell you that Bagel feels safe, or I could have you express the fact that Bagel is like all of a sudden clommed up against a guy, and he's just like does not want the man to let go, and he's like, please stay, because he is desperate for like a home, right? That like that's the theme, is like Bagel doesn't have a home, so he's gonna seek power because he doesn't know, like he's a brand new, he's like a baby. No one's taught him in the ways of the world. So like he's like, I need you to help me. But he doesn't know what he needs, right? That was a good ramble. Yeah, so I'm showing how Raul feels. Raul's like, oh man, I'm so sorry. And Bagel's like, I understand. But also like, can you hold me? And it's just like, I kind of like, I wrote that scene, and as I was writing that, I was just like, oh man, I do not need to cry. Which meant that I was doing good. So I'm really happy about that. Yep. All right. So I think that's all I got to say. I gotta charge this because apparently did not charge it last night and go to work early. But think about how memory affects how people remember. People remember how characters remember other characters, and how they might feel about somebody who made them feel good, but they just might not be able to express it. They just might be like, I just need a hug. Or like they might just say something that just seems off the wall, but they're trying to like pretend that they're tough. Because that's definitely Bagel's shtick. He's like, he's pretending to be tough. He's pretending to be tough. He's like a combination of Robert Moses and my wife, who's really snarky. And I'm just like, we'll see. We'll see how far power broker he goes, because that's the other thing. But that's it. Thanks for coming to my craft vlog about random stuff that I was thinking about. Yeah. Call it a day.